On behalf of Maestro Digital Mind, we are super privileged to perform for the second year in a row our digital mining panel. Ultimately, Maestro is about bringing connectivity underground to the underground mining world and provide additional ventilation solutions for the world. How better to do so than to bring the very experts doing it in the mining industry to show us what does it take to actually bring connectivity. I am honored to have an exceptional panel and to introduce our moderator. Last year was our first year doing this, and we had the amazing Bob McDonald, who I, if you recall, thought of him as my Mr. Dressed Up. So what is Steve? So for all of us, it is about trust. And when someone thinks about Steve Paikin, who runs his most excellent show on TV Ontario, The Agenda, you think trust. He is my Walter Cronkite, and most importantly, almost like my reporter Kermit the Frog. So if you want real value, you're going to get it here today. So please know that Maestro Digital Mine is here for you, and we're proud to be part of the Northern Ontario Mining Showcase. And without further ado, please welcome Mr. Steve Paikin, our moderator. Woo!
Obviously, Bob McDonald was busy this year. A shame.
Yeah.
I'm delighted that I remind you of a 65-year-old balding man in Walter Cronkite. That's a beautiful thing as well. Thank you. Can I just acknowledge in the audience today a guy who I usually see up in his neck of the woods, but now I'm seeing him in our neck of the woods. There's the Mayor of Sudbury right here, Brian Bigger. How about a hand for him? There we go. Your Worship, nice to see you here. Let me just read you the spiel that we have here so you understand what we're going to be talking about, and then I'll introduce our four guests. We'll get off to the races and then save some time at the end for questions in case you have any. And Shannon invites me to do this, and I'm grateful for it because I have the honor of being the Chancellor at Laurentian University in Sudbury, which is, of course, the country's mining university, and so this is all of great interest to Laurentian and to me as well. That was almost an applause line there, wasn't it? I saw you. You applauded 3 times, nobody picked it up, and then you felt very embarrassed. I'm so sorry about that. Today, our panelists are joining us from mining companies leading the digital transformation to discuss and debate underground communications infrastructure. We're going to discuss the applications that are driving the need for connectivity to improve production and reduce costs and enable worker safety. We're going to determine what technology solutions are best suited for what specific challenge is going on underground, and we're going to bridge the gap between OT and IT to better integrate technology in operating mines. And to do that, we welcome, and if they could just put their hands up when I introduce them so everybody knows who they are, Derek Dupre, Chief Technology Officer of Trevali; Matthew Curtis, Senior Technology Manager at Newmont; Chris Burgess, Director of Innovation and Transformation at Yamana Gold; and Anthony Downs, Digital Leader at Vale. And how about a hand for our panel for coming in this afternoon here at the Convention Center. I want to just start with a very neutral, open-ended question to the four of you, and let's just go down the line. What does digital in your business mean to you? Start us off.
It means capturing, leveraging, and utilizing data to make better tactical and strategic decisions.
Next, please.
It means connected.
It means
Connected. Everything is connected.
pure and simple.
Yep.
That's what digital means to you.
Yep.
Please.
Digital means the way to challenge the way you do your standard operating procedures and how you can use technology to leverage those.
Please.
Yeah. Digital is leveraging technologies to solve business problems, but it goes further to digital transformation. That's around people, process, and technology coming together. So it's a broader transformation where people is first.
All right. Okay. That is the very opening sort of general statements. Now let's get a little deeper and figure out how we put some flesh on that bone. To do that, you are doing what right now, for example?
So first of all, we're rolling out a significant large volume of LTE underground to give us that connectivity. Then we're giving mobility devices to our frontline workers so that they can capture and leverage data as they do their work. And the other key is we're looking at more and more autonomous equipment to let the workers work from the surface and let the machinery work underground.
Do they prefer that?
Some guys like to be underground, some like to be on the surface, but the surface is certainly a safer, more productive place to be more often than not.
Chris, what does it mean to you?
I was just going to add to that, though. I think one thing you could consider with connectivity or digitization or automation, all flavors of the same thing essentially. You're looking at taking people out of harm's way, hence taking people out from underground. But you've also got to look at the people side of that, not only health and safety, but our license to operate, so our relationships with the communities. So we tend to think with the topic digitization is just an IT or a tech thing, and it isn't.
Goes beyond that.
That is just a tool. People always ask me, what's our digital strategy? We don't have one. I mean, I will use digital to solve a problem, as you said, solve problems. But it isn't something that's in and of its own right. It's something that we're going to do to create value for the company.
Matthew, how are you applying digital to your business?
First off, I'd like to say, I totally agree with you. And at the same time, exactly, digital's not IT or OT. It's basically how you improve your processes, how you do your efficiencies, and it's just more than over-encompassing, technologies that are there. It's like how we do business and optimize. Newmont, we look at, same thing as my other panel member, through automation, through tele-op undergrounds, different applications, and the biggest thing for us right now is data analytics. So, for example, everything from your telemetry from your assets, your mobile assets, to even something as simple as Lean Six Sigma time studies of your assets that's underground.
Derek, how about you? How are you applying digital?
Our program is across the whole mining value chain, but specifically today's talk is more around the digitization of our core operations or assets, and connectivity is a huge enabler for that. We've got lots of use cases, value cases, which really requires the underground connectivity to enable that.
Anybody want to take a guess on where Derek's from? It's not Sudbury. That's your first clue. Yes.
I used to stay there as well.
Derek, where are you from?
I'm currently in Vancouver. I worked in Australia before, but South African born.
South Africa originally. I thought I recognized that accent. What do, Matthew, pick up the story then, what do you anticipate the impact will be of digital on your business?
Well, the impact of digital in our business is it's all about, a lot of us are in mining, our mines are getting deeper, costs are getting higher, and without that digitization, the optimization of how we do things, a lot of us are going to be out of business. So if we don't start looking how the strategies are going to move ahead, the mines in the future are going to be a lot different. So we need to adapt, we need to move forward, and if we don't, then we're going to be left behind.
Anthony, the impact on your business?
We see that digital is going to allow us to be significantly safer, more productivity in the business, but to also be more attractive. So we need significantly more workers. We've got a lot more mines opening up, and we want people to enjoy being in the workplace and giving them data, giving them information, giving them access to technology. Makes the workplace more productive, but it also makes it a more interesting and pleasant place to be.
Preez, how about for you?
So certainly in the gold space, we're price takers, right? So we haven't got many levers to pull. We have a few levers to pull in operations, but essentially they are cost savings, reducing costs and driving efficiencies. So that's essentially what we'll leverage to do that, or in part, the digitization piece. But you were also right in terms of attracting. One of the challenges we have as an industry is attracting new talent, right? We're all over 20 on this panel. So attracting that next generation in is increasingly difficult, and we've got to. One of the tools we can use to do that is by publicising a bit more around what we're doing with digital. We're doing some pretty cool stuff, but you go and ask the university kids coming out, mining is probably bottom on their list, right? In terms of, they want to go to Silicon Valley, et cetera, right? So we've still got some work to do in that space.
That is also not a Sudbury, Ontario accent.
No.
What's that accent from?
I'm a brethren. I was actually born in Zimbabwe, but South African citizen.
Thought so. Okay. Derek, you want to pick that final piece up? The anticipated impact on your business of this?
For us, it's the long-term sustainability of the business, and that involves safety and the environment and all that as well. But then obviously unlocking value for the business, cost savings and recurring revenue. And I think I can say a bit more than some of the other members. Our corporate communication allowed me to say a bit more. So we want to also unlock, as part of that, bring our all-in sustaining cost down to below 90 cents. We're a bit smaller miner. For us, it translates to about $50 million of recurring cash a year that we want to deliver, and digital is an enabler for all of that.
Gotcha. Can we talk a bit about the barriers right now to your being able to do what you want to do? And you're laughing already, so you get to go first.
Oh.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Matthew. Biggest barriers to innovation and to introducing this agenda further.
And again, it might sound like I'm kind of beating the same drum that we've all talked about before, but it all comes down to people, the change management, how you implement that technology. So a lot of the barriers that a lot of us, a lot of our peers have went through is it's all based on the deployment of the systems, the change management with the people, but doesn't just end there in kind of the adoption phase. A lot of times the barriers seem to be the sustainability of it. So it's just like the continuous sustainability of the technology or processes or whatever in our industry. So like in reality, regardless of the technology, it's all about the people and the people underground to keep them safe, to train them, to make sure they believe in the tech. And I believe one of my partners here mentioned about getting our workers to believe in it. And you start to get them to really adhere to that culture, and then that's the biggest thing for any technology to deploy is you need your workers underground to really own it and feel it and know that it's part of their business and it's going to make them safe, and it's also going to help the business move forward.
Have you found it to be a hard sell?
It can be, but it's all based on how you deploy. So the biggest thing in our industry, for example, is it all depends on who do you talk to. So you go to a site, you go to a mine site, and do you talk to the senior management or do you talk to the miners at the face? A lot of us have been in mining, you know the answer to that. You go talk to the miners at the face. What are the problems you're running into? You get their ownership, you get their feedback, get their commitment, and then it basically goes from the bottom up from there. And then if you do that kind of approach, you're going to win every time.
I'd agree with that. Like, it's really important that you have your frontline workers and the frontline leadership involved from day one in defining what the problem is, then what the solution is, then actively participating in the rollout. So they're helping themselves rather than someone doing something to them. It's really key.
Do they see it that way?
Absolutely. We take deliberate effort to make sure that we have them with us every step of the way, and if we see it waning, then we stop and we re-establish that connection before we continue.
Yeah. Chris, biggest obstacles for you?
And also, you're solving a problem for them, right?
Yep.
You're not forcing a new bit of technology down their throat that they don't want or don't need, right? So there's value that you're creating. But leave that topic for a second, or that particular point. One of the other hurdles, I think, is, especially with some of our mines, we have 600, 700 kilometers of tunnels, right, underground. Getting connectivity to all those faces is a challenge, right? So we're not going to do that. So one of the inhibitors is cost and right fit, right? I mean, you can have LTE across your whole mine if you've got an unlimited budget, right? And we don't. So it's the right fit for the solution. Or maybe it's mobile capabilities. You can move connectivity around the face.
Derek, obstacles for you?
I guess in the current uncertainty in the market for us will be around continuing to basically fund what we want to do. And the key to that is really show that we're delivering incremental value as we're delivering the program. And then the change and the impact and adoption is key as well.
Matthew, no one's got limitless budgets, right? You've all got to sell your superiors on the fact that this makes sense to do financially. Can you give this audience a ballpark figure of what you might be looking to invest in this kind of thing?
I'd rather not comment on that.
Geez, I'd rather you did, but okay, I understand.
No, but I can't give you the dollar figure, but the thing is for all of us here in the mining, especially like all my brothers up here, it's all about the safety of the workers, and there's no real price tag to that. So a lot of this technology and a lot of these processes is keeping in mind if there's anything that's for the safety of our people, there is no limit to the cost that a lot of our operations would spend.
Anybody prepared to put a dollar figure on sort of?
Yeah, sort of.
Go ahead.
So we're looking at analyzed around upper 10 million, but that's our direct investment. We're really working a lot with partners as well in the broader ecosystem, and they co-invest as part of that into us as well. It's a risk reward share as well.
Can you do much for that amount of money?
You can, yes. And again, as I said, it's around showing that you're delivering value, incremental value delivery, and as you start delivering value, you get more funding for it. You don't want to go to to the board and say you want 50 million and you promise you'll deliver something in 2 years, you need to show that you're delivering value and then go back and request additional funds.
Anthony, what about you on that front?
Probably.
I can answer it too.
Yeah, you can.
I'm just joking.
Derek had my role before.
You're on a roll, buddy.
So
I know.
he's got the inside knowledge. So you said 10, Derek?
Yeah, north of 10 annually.
Yeah, so we're probably roughly 4 times that, but remember it's quite a significant difference in size as well between what Derek looks after and what I look after.
And are you talking about worldwide or one place in general or what?
Let's say in Ontario.
In Ontario?
Yep.
4 times what he said?
Yep.
That's a good chunk of change.
Yeah, although, so I traditionally come from processing and open cut mining, and when you look at the underground in general, not just our facilities, we've got a lot of catching up to do. So that needs some investment, but there's very strong business cases there as well.
Chris, you haven't weighed in on this yet.
Yeah, it all depends. I'm not going to give you a number, but it depends on your life of mine, right? So if you're building a mine from scratch, that's completely different to retrofitting something with a 5-year mine life or 15-year mine life. So I get back to my point on the right fit. I don't think there is an exact answer to that.
Is it a tough sell for upstairs?
You always look at it as around what you're going to produce. What is the value you're creating? Not, hey, I want to go and spend, $500K on putting this kit in. So it's, you were right. It's all about health and safety. That's paramount. But can we remember those levers I was talking about a few minutes ago? If we can reduce costs or bring some certainty in terms of targets for ounces, or drive some recovery improvements.
Yeah. The secret is to do some experimentation, right? Take a problem, prove it that you can solve it, prove it to leadership, prove it to the frontline guys. We can actually solve the problem by doing X, Y, and Z, and then scale it up. And if it doesn't solve it, then work out where you went wrong, learn from it, and have a second or third try at it, prove it, and scale it up.
Now, the fact you just said X, Y, and Z instead of X, Y, and Z, so you do not have the Sudbury, Ontario accent either. Where's yours?
I'm working on it. I was born in Australia, but lived in the US for quite a while.
So this is a very international group we've got here. The one guy I haven't asked yet is you. Where are you from?
Thunder Bay at the moment.
There we go. Hometown boy, even though he's in Toronto right now. Can you you said that, you take some investment, you solve a problem, you show everybody that this works, you move on, you try it again. Can you give us a real life example of how that might have happened at your company?
So when Derek was there, Derek started a process looking at integrated scheduling. So taking an operating schedule, a maintenance schedule, event schedule, a range of other schedules, putting them together in a single master schedule, and using a tool to work out what the dependencies and what the conflicts are in those schedules. And what it took is, it meant in operations, they were scheduling 2 weeks worth of activity on maybe a dozen tasks. That same work today is about 160 tasks, so a lot more granular. We proved it manually without a tool. Then we applied a tool at a single mine, proved it works. Now we're scaling up across the other 6 mines in the portfolio.
Matthew, you got a similar success story you can share?
Yes, actually, I'd like to point out, I like how you indicated that you did the POC, your proof of concept, you proved it at one of your sites, and then you did mass deploy, right? And I know that's kind of one of the realms in the past. A lot of our competitors and a lot of our other people in the industry is we kind of get into the tendency of perpetual piloting, right? Yep. So you sit there and you pilot industry in this mine, then another mine, and they're like, well, are we ever going to do anything about it? We actually have several advantages, different technologies that we have a lot of our mines that we've done, especially now with especially the acquisition with Goldcorp and Newmont. So it's now a very diverse company with different successes. So we're still in the stage of flux. So maybe next year I can answer that one.
Okay, Derek, how about you? A real life example of some success at this?
Yes, but I'll answer it maybe a little bit different as well. The way we currently approach it, we're focusing on one of our operations more specifically. So most of the investment is in that operation that I've referred to before. And it's really building the platforms and the blueprint around how we're going to adopt this across the broader business. And then picking that up once we've proven it, solved it, and then move it to the other operations as well.
Chris?
So the whole innovation process is what I manage at Yamana. So we have quite a few examples. We follow surprise, surprise, the proof of concept approach where you prove something out to, I hate the term, but fail fast. I don't think you do fail fast. I think as long as you're learning from it, an experiment may not go the way you want. As long as you learn from it, it's good, it's not a failure. So anyway, it's a cyclical thing. As you go forward and get more mature, and then you scale it, maybe you apply that, and then full deployment. It's been in the news in the last year or so. We've deployed machine learning at one of our sites quite extensively.
Which one?
In El Peñón, Chile, and identified 27 new high probability, or 27 new targets, 7 of which are high probability. So that's pretty exciting. That's one example. We've used blockchain for the ethical transportation and tracking of gold as well. Those are on the big end, and then small stuff. Really just using data, trying to get insights on that. We're an AWS shop as well, so we use some of their tools, leverage some of the machine learning at a lower level to get some insights in the supply chain space, and then in the exploration space, there's a lot of intensive jobs like ISATIS and so forth, applications that are used. We've started to use virtual machines, so they don't lock up a user's desktop. They're virtual. Obviously, you need some level of connectivity, but they're proving pretty interesting, those results so far.
Since you raised the issue here, let's talk about failure and failing forward and what you learned from failing. Derek, maybe I'll go to you first on this one. Has anything that you've tried to bring in this area we're talking about this afternoon, really not worked? It's just failed. You learned something, but that didn't work. Can you give us an example?
Yeah, I'm sure we've all had lots of failures that we don't want to talk about.
But we're sharing our experiences here.
For me, most of the failures is really around adoption. So a lot of it digital applications or mobile applications that's been developed, and because we didn't bring people along from the start, that adoption was not always there. So most of my learnings would have been in that specific areas.
Matthew, any failures you can share?
Not specifically, but I like to. I agree with you as well. Like a lot of the times we do projects, we do the initiation phase, we adopt the technology, and I think a lot of times, and I'd like to say us in general. I don't want to speak for everyone, but I know that sustainability phase is where we seem to fail in regards to general technology, not specific technology, but like all kind of applications. So. A lot of times, especially coming from the corporate office, we come in there, we do implementations of technology, you go to site, and you said it specifically, you go there to try to get the site to own it, but if obviously they don't have that ownership, they're not going to sustain it, they're not going to continue with it, and then it just kind of drops off. So there's various cases of technology that was really good, a lot of value, but it just it didn't pan out because it wasn't sustainable or owned by sites.
Lessons learned, Anthony, from failure?
Not necessarily a lesson, well, not a failure, but definitely a lesson learned. We've been applying autonomous kit to a range of underground equipment like scoops, for example. And we've applied it to a number of assets that have been fairly old in their life cycle. And as we have been upping their utilization, we're starting to come across, maintenance problems and other challenges. So the lesson learned is as we choose equipment to put the autonomous kits on, we really want to try to choose the newest and best maintained kit to make sure that we get the productivity and availability we're looking for.
Chris, how about you? Lessons learned from failure?
Yeah, got a few. I think Derek covered it really well. I mean, getting people engaged is key, but it's not just the people from site. It's also trying to get people to understand the strategic vision that you have and the direction that you're all going. Because I get bombarded every day with all sorts of new stuff and vendors and so forth. And you've got to sift through that and try to uncover what the real value is. But also you've got to look at your long-term total cost of investment, right? Cost of ownership, and look at, are we all rowing in the right direction? It may seem so, but under the iceberg there could be quite a few cracks forming. So you need to ensure that you get obviously site ownership, but also from a corporate perspective and a functional perspective, you need to ensure clarity of vision.
Well, let me follow up on that. Yeah, you wanted to. Go ahead. I was going to go to you next.
Did you find like for is also in terms for vendor relationships as well for the success of a lot of these as well? So one of the things we found was it's not only the adoption, like I like exactly, you're right, the functional areas, the corporate, the site, but one of the things for a lot of the successes that I've noticed is also the kind of the in-depth vendor relationships for the implementation for the sites. So do you find that that's instrumental for your operations?
It's key.
Yeah,
Absolutely key. It's a make or break.
Matthew, what do you do when you've made the pitch to your frontline teams and there's somebody who's just not on board? How do you handle that?
Again, it's all goes back to, we talked about change management, we talk about, I'll use the term PMP processes, but the biggest thing is communication. So a lot of times when we go to a huddle and you talk to the miners, and a lot of times it's just not an understanding of how that's going to help them. Like you mentioned, is how are you going to help the miner at the face? So if you're going to put a technology in and they're not really supportive of it, 9 times out of 10, it's because they just don't understand what it's for, how it's going to help them, and how it's going to help things moving forward. Because a lot of the interpretations is this is something that's going to be put in that may be obstruction to my job. And 9 times out of 10, again, it's not, but it's just the communication of it, and then the discussion, and then the engagements at the site, right?
Anthony, how about that for you?
So I think it comes down to communications. Like the guys underground, really want to in most cases really leverage technology, have their job become easier. They're not interested in their job becoming harder, and we'd like to think that the way we engage is that we're solving real problems that are having annoyance and sometimes significant impact to the miners. And if we come along and we can remove that or lighten their load, they're not going to be complaining about that.
Derek, for you?
I guess mine is fairly similar to all the other answers as well. So really making them part of solving their real life problems, understanding their day in their life, their pain points, and what we can do to solve them. And if there's still someone that really doesn't believe in what you want to do, so have a conversation with him and understand it from his point of view.
How often does that conversation go well, and how often does the conversation go badly?
I would say 90% of the time it goes well.
What do you do about the 10%?
I won't say today.
You can't blame the girl for asking. Okay. Where, Chris, let's talk about this. Where do you currently have connectivity in your mines?
We drill for a living, essentially. So we use leaky feeder a lot, as well as Wi-Fi and so forth, and Maestro, by the way. So we have connectivity in all our mines. The question is, what level of connectivity?
What's the answer to that question?
Well, again, it depends, right? Because I gave you the example earlier of 600 kilometers of tunnels. You're not going to get Wi-Fi across that whole that whole mine. So you need it when you want to use it, right? So again, it depends. It also depends what you want to do with that information. How much data are you sending back? Are you doing video, or are you just doing telemetry or basic data that's coming through? So it very much depends on the use case.
Matthew, how much and how good is yours?
Various levels. I do have to agree, it's all based on use case. It's all based on what you want to do with it. So for example, everything from fleet management systems in an underground environment to telemetry to analytics based on what you want to see. And again, a lot of considerations is a lot of our operations in the world are older. So to actually get a lot of those communications to the face, a lot of communications down those drifts is challenging, right? So a new mine, it's open, it's like a new car, you can build whatever you want. So it's a lot of our mines have various degrees of Wi-Fi underground and different implementation with different technologies. So it varies on each mine and in the requirements of that specific mine profile and what country they're in. So.
In your operations, Anthony, how much and how good?
So we're heading towards 70 kilometers underground of LTE. And as the guys extend the drifts are extending the LTE along with all the other utilities that you'd expect. We're really focused on the ramps, key intersections, and then when we're actively working, and it'll just continue to organically grow week on week as we expand the mine.
We have obvious gaps right now.
There's always going to be places from a cost point of view you're not going to put LTE. So some of the old remnants and areas we're not actively working in, but if we open them up for any reason, we'll make sure we've got the coverage in there as well.
Derek, how about for you? How much and how good?
It varies between operations as well. Most operations will at least have leaky feeder across all the main ramps, and then we will a combination of fiber and Wi-Fi access points across key infrastructure areas, so pump stations, main fan stations, and the rest.
Any bad gaps?
Yeah, I guess with most operations, most of the gaps now is more in the active mining areas, and this is where this whole last mile connectivity comes in. So currently a lot of the work is happening in those areas, a lot of the data is generated in those areas, but we don't have good connectivity there.
Matthew, this is going to sound like a bit of a ridiculous question, but I've got a camp on Manitoulin Island, and that's not the ridiculous part.
Is this an invite or no?
Not yet.
Okay, okay.
Well, we're going to see how well this panel goes before we go there. But oftentimes people say, do you get connectivity up there? And I say, well, it depends which way the wind is blowing, which is not literally the case, although sometimes it's kind of literally the case. Do you have circumstances like that where it depends on the sort of most ridiculous circumstances as to whether or not you've got it or you've got gaps?
I'd say like a lot of it goes. Some of it goes down to geology. Like for example, like a lot of the rocks underground has a lot of different propagation. So like literally you have some rocks, for example, you can get a Wi-Fi access point and it bounces and it'll go around corners and do all kinds of weird things. And then you get some rocks that'll actually just absorb all the signals that are coming out of it. So it's all based on the actual geographic footprint of our individual operations, which vary from the Canadian Shield all the way down to our operations in Chile or Argentina. It's all based on the actual material that you're in. So.
Anthony, how tough a challenge is like the last mile, the last kilometer, the last face, that kind of thing?
It is tough, but we've been playing around with directional antennas and some other tools to try to get the coverage down as close as we possibly can.
Derek, how about for you? The last mile, the last face?
I guess it's fairly similar to what he said, and we're also looking at some solutions and also looking at Maestro solutions as part of the current process we're going through, but then also using aerials and antennas just to get that further 150, 200 meter connectivity down to the face.
Chris, if you could solve that last mile or the last face problem, how much would it change your life?
Me personally, not a lot, probably, but in terms of productivity, absolutely, data availability. But I say that, but conversely, it depends what you're doing. The truck or the sensor could sync up when it gets into a hotspot. So it all depends what you're doing. Semi-autonomous stuff would be really beneficial, for sure. But as I'm talking about this, I'm thinking about it. I think we shouldn't lose sight of some of the edge computing capability. So at the moment, the edge is sitting, maybe in the office building, the admin building, on the surface. Maybe there's some opportunities there for us to leverage some edge computing, bring that the power of the cloud and that machine learning capability a bit closer to the operator.
And Matthew, maybe we could make a bit of a list here. Who is involved in your operation in deploying connectivity solutions underground for you guys?
So basically, usually what happens for a connectivity project, I guess, is we have a project team that comes in that gets kind of developed. We basically assign an owner on site, so we'll have like a business sponsor who's going to be the ownership. And then we basically have that vendor relationship. So for when we do the connectivity and the deployment, then we kind of go through our process to move ahead and to install the technology. So
how long does it all take from beginning to actual end?
It depends on the complexity. So one thing that I kind of want to go back to, like you're mentioning too, is one of the issues that we run into, especially connectivity and a lot of the drifts, is a lot of our mines is harsh environments. So it's very hard to find a lot of technology that can handle stuff like concussion from the blasts, the corrosive environment. There's just so many factors that make it very difficult in order to allow that sort of connectivity.
Anthony, do you or the operations that you're aware of from other companies have the technical wherewithal and the skill to innovate yourself in this area?
We work with a lot of partners to get the initial design down, to select the right equipment. But after that, it's a project team and the site electricians who are doing the deployment for us. And the idea is it'll come to a point where my team won't need to be involved, and just like the guys know how to extend air, they know how to extend water, they're going to know how to extend LTE, and it'll just become just part of their job, just like leaky feeder is today.
Derek, what about for you? The approach to innovation that you either take or can't take at your company?
Yeah, we've really got an open innovation approach, so really working with broad partnerships around innovating, so definitely not doing all of it internally.
Chris, you prefer to build or buy?
Buy.
Buy, because?
So if you take a step back, mining is typically a consumer of innovation, right? There are some exceptions for sure. We're doing some research projects with some universities and so forth, and in some groups. But by and large, as an industry, we are consumers of innovation, i.e. the innovation is coming external to the company, and then we deploy it or test it and then deploy it. It depends on how deep your pockets are, right? If you can spend X million in terms of the R&D, or like Yamana, we're much more focused, got a pragmatic approach on innovation. What's the problem we're trying to solve? And let's go and find a solution to solve it. We may be part of that solution, in terms of that thinking that comes up with a solution. But we're not saying not invented here. We're very much open.
Matthew, build or buy?
It's actually pretty funny. There's a saying, actually, one of my mentors said. He said that in mining we always want to rush to be second, because you don't let the other guy spend the money, right? In regards to Newmont, there's not really a position at the moment for either or. So
let's do one more question here, then we're going to open it up to the audience, and I hope you will have questions and get these folks involved as well. Let's go around the horn here on this. Over the next few years, what innovations or technologies do you see coming down the pipe that will change the way you do mining today? Derek, start us off.
So definitely, as we mentioned, connectivity will be important. We want to move more and more information to people, basically that's doing the work, giving them the insight so they can make the right decisions. So that will continue. AI will become a lot more prevalent. And then other technology areas around battery storage and renewable energy will change the way we operate as a mining industry going forward.
Anthony, yours.
Battery electric vehicles is definitely there, and a big focus, both from a vent point of view and emissions. But we also see a strong rise in autonomous and semi-autonomous equipment, and allowing us to be producing during the blast clearance, during the shift changes, and addressing the bottlenecks underground.
Chris.
So I agree with all of those, of course. But looking at it, as I always do, from a different angle, the answer is whatever it takes to keep our license to operate. That is absolutely key for us. So we're going to have to do a better job as an industry, looking after the environment we're in, looking after the communities we work with and partner with. So we need to look at ways to improve that.
Matthew, last word.
I guess we'll call it the Trinity, I guess. So the electrification, fleet management, and automation.
Those are the Holy Trinity in this business?
The Holy Trinity,
The Holy Trinity, okay. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Let's now start to take some questions from the floor. Please, sir, thank you for starting us off. Do we have a microphone that we can get to this fellow so that anybody can hear? Or you know what, if we don't, I'm going to do the old Phil Donahue thing here, and I'll just do it. There you go.
Thanks very much, and just want to acknowledge you, the panel, and Sharon and Maestro for putting this on. One of the better panels I've seen. Thanks, very good. Question. If we don't have a mine, and we're designing, and we create the digital mine, I now want to construct the physical twin. Is digital ready there to enable us to do that? I don't mean tying the last piece into SAP for cost control, but literally, can I execute construction out of the digital mine? Are we ready?
I think what it allows you to do is do the simulations, right? So the what-if analysis, particularly in the plant, that exists today. So I think as you go through, I don't know what stage you're in, pre-fees or something like that. Yeah. So if you're going through that, I think there's a huge accelerator in that space. I don't think we're necessarily there to say, cookie cutter, take this and go and build it. But in terms of the plant, absolutely.
And in reality, like coming from experience from operating mines, the biggest thing is you need to define exactly what your vision is going to be for this digital mine. And again, that's been a lot of the challenges and a lot of the failures that we've had is kind of like where we're going to go, what direction you're going to go. So if you're going to go an entire electric mine, electric LHDs, vehicles, you want to do all that, you need to make those decisions at the front and figure out exactly what your vision is going to be and what your plan is going to be.
So you mentioned battery storage.
It's okay, Alistair.
You mentioned battery storage, energy storage, and maybe renewables. Where do you see the application for energy storage? I was just curious, you mentioned that. And maybe anyone else with respect to renewables, solar, those types of things that could be a future way of powering mines.
Yes, specifically if I take one of our operations, Rospina, we do have a lot of sunlight there. Currently, batteries is still too expensive to really make it viable for storage, but as technology changes, a storage option with solar will definitely make economic sense, and that will power most of that operation for us.
So that's a really good. I'll add on to that actually. So like to give you an example, like that's a really good question. So like a lot of our northern communities, because of the lack of power, you know, the issue is like storage. That's something that's a lot of times we've been looking at is because we're restricted. So the deeper we go, more power we need, but it's not there. So that's why I know a lot of operations we are looking for alternatives. So may or may not be renewables, but definitely some sort of energy storage in the future. So.
Got a question here in the front row.
Michael Ribbons, Maestro Digital Line. What is your opinion on the SMRs, the small nuclear reactors that we're thinking about in Canada right now? It's any thoughts, opinions? Would you ever deploy that in your mines?
I love the idea. The issue is, I think, regulations. No surprise. I mean, if one of our mines in Argentina would be a perfect site for that, I just don't want to go through the paperwork of trying to get a nuclear reactor through the red tape. I think that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah.
You know that the governments of Ontario and Saskatchewan and New Brunswick have just signed an agreement that they're going to get into this in a big way. So the political situation may be open to it. You never know.
Yeah.
Who else? Anybody out here? All the way back here. Oh, how am I going to get to you? Hang on a sec. I'm going to sneak through here. Hang on. Here we go. Are you shooting right now? You are? I'm going to duck down then. Okay, here we go.
Thank you. We talked about battery electric vehicles coming, fleet management, automation. I think the Trinity was called. This might be in the autonomous space. But when I think about risk management, just sending people to work every day underground it's risky. And when or how close are we to removing people from having to work underground, or get really close?
I'll take that one. So I think a lot of us are moving ahead a lot further than people think. Like for example, in Newmont, a lot of our mines are actually moving away from like line of sight mucking underground. So a lot of you that know mining, literally you have the person sitting there in a muck stand and then the scoops going back and forth. So there's a lot of push for using technology and like tele-op and full automation in order to get the miner away from them. And in reality, I think a lot of us have that kind of goal. Is the biggest thing is to get the miner out of danger and to get them out of there. And if we can do it with technology, which goes back to the safety component we talked about, then it's a win for everybody. So I think a lot of us are moving there. It's slow, but we're going to get there eventually.
Anybody else on that?
I think there's some gaps in the equipment. Like if you had a vision of a fully autonomous mine with no one underground doing normal operations, I think there's a few gaps still in what the equipment's actually capable of doing. So I think as the OEMs kind of fill that gap, the opportunity to realise the vision becomes more and more obtainable.
But the biggest issue we have too is how we do our mine plans and how we do actually do our development, right?
Yep.
So I know that's one thing we found is like you put in autonomous fleets or you put in like you said, we put in the technology, but they're so more encompassing than just the technology. It's, like you said, it's every level for everything from your mine plans to how you develop to all kinds of things. So.
And it's also, we're in a retrofit environment at that point, right?
Yeah.
So does it make economic sense as well?
Gotcha. Anybody else? Who else got a question? Over here, stand by.
Hi there. I recently asked a question about equipment reliability and maintenance to a panel, and from the likes of the Exxons, Dow Chemicals, and Audi, they all said that there's a lot of value to be captured there, but we're far away from fully capturing it. What's your take on it within mining?
Yeah, I can maybe start off specifically from underground mining equipment. It's not just around reliability, but the utilization of equipment as well. But if we really want to look at reliability, one of the reasons why we want to put connectivity everywhere underground is really leveraging the health data from the equipment, so we can start making more predictive, informed decisions around when is the best time to bring the equipment in for maintenance, for example, but also predict before something will fail, so we can bring it in and rectify it, and it won't take the equipment out of production. So there's a huge opportunity in that specific area on the underground, but then also in a process plant environment, similar as well, leveraging all that equipment health data to really optimize your maintenance strategies.
Yeah, so to add that as well, like one of the reasons for the last mile as well is that, like, for us particularly, is the last 10% of information that we can't get. So, like, to your point, the maintenance functions, analytics, could be production variance. Like, it's that last 10% of information that we can't achieve.
Chris, you wanted to add?
No, I was just going to add a point to what Derek was saying around, the activities we can take to be proactive, but converse is true in that we can look at when we don't want a mechanic to touch the vehicle, right?
Gotcha. Anybody else out here? Probably got time for one more if anybody's got one more. I think, yes, right down here. Very good. You get the last one, sir.
I'm not a union guy, but so technology, you're always hearing technology takes jobs away. Comments you have on that? Sometimes in terms of the technology, maybe you talk about autonomous, there may be less jobs in the face, which is safer, I would say, but some comments on, I think I know your answer, but different kinds of jobs, I guess, is what would be great.
Yeah,
sort of question.
I'd have to disagree on that. I come from an electrical background, and with the autonomy, with the technology coming in, all these deployments. So yes, okay, fine. You have a worker at the face. You put in the technology, but that creates two more jobs. So then you need a millwright, you need an electrician, you need an automation specialist in order to maintain that equipment. So it actually doesn't necessarily remove the jobs; it adds more high-paying technical jobs. I think as a mining industry, one of the discussions that we've always had is when you do those things and do those implementations, the biggest thing that we've found is you take those miners, so those people that used to operate it, and make them the technicians. Train them, because the best person that knows the machine is the operator, right? And then now train them to maintain it. So,
anybody else on that?
I think I said at the beginning around the ability or inability in the industry to attract new talent. And I think by doing exactly that, the jobs are more attractive, right? So I think we have a better chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
On that note of consensus, as I invite Shannon to come up to close this off, I know all of you want to join me in thanking these four for a most interesting last engagement here at PDAC 2020. Thanks very much, guys.
It's my pleasure to have hosted you guys. And in honor of Mr. Steve Paikin, we have some Maestro tequila to get the party going in fine PDAC form. So here you go to us. And we share it later. Don't Sweet 205. Just kidding. I also wanted to mention the fact that Amy DiMatteo from Fenmore is here. And without him and his crew, we would not have put this together. He's here with us today. So just wanted to acknowledge Mr. Amy DiMatteo. So the best part about this is when you bring in 5 celebrity experts, there's always a signing, an autograph, pictures, whatever you feel like. $40 per photo, just saying. You can pay the Maestro booth over there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a group shot, and then we're going to actually recommend, if any of you would like to meet our panelists and get a chance to have an autographed copy of Mr. Steve Paikin's book, we will be right in front of the Maestro Digital Mine for you. So on behalf of us, thank you very much. Enjoy your conference.